Welcome to BAM, Badass Moms with Lori and Jenny. We are moms on a mission to share women's stories about life, fitness, aging, relationships, travel, and much more. Hello, friends, and thanks for listening. I just wanted to take a second to give you a quick reminder about subscribing to the show. If you have not already, just take a moment and do so. This will make sure that you never miss a daily bite or an upcoming episode. And in addition to that, if you have a few extra moments and like to drop us a review, we'd really appreciate it. And there's also a sponsor of the show located at the bottom of all of our episodes. Once again, thank you for listening. Thank you for being badass.
Hello, Badass Moms. Thank you so much for joining us on the show today. I am very excited. I told Selene I may fangirl a little bit because we have Selene Yeager on the show, and I have followed her work for quite some time. She is a health and fitness writer, including two books I absolutely love, one called Roar, one called Next Level, where she partnered with Stacey Sims. She is a content manager, a feisty Menopause, and Hit Play Not Pause podcast host, which I'm also an avid listener of. She's a personal trainer, nutrition coach, cycling coach, pro racer, former All-American Ironman triathlete, and did we mention a badass mom? And I have to say this quote because I loved it so much. It said, Selene is feisty in many ways, but especially because she talks about menopause out loud without embarrassment in traditionally male spaces. So thank you for this.
Thank you.
Yes.
I hope I can live up to all that.
How do we even sum that up? So Selene, you just have such an amazing background. You're an amazing human. So thrilled to have you on the show. So let's kind of start. Let's take it way back. Like, I want to know how you got into cycling. I want to know how you juggled it all, being a mom and, being a competitive cyclist and, what brought you to your current path, and love to start there.
Yeah. Whoa, there's a lot there. So I'll try to give you the high level version of all that. I always really just gravitated to riding a bike. I don't really know where that came from, but I was infatuated with it from a very young age. And even when I got my driver's license, I was sort of always that kid that be like, oh, I bet I could ride 20 miles to the lake in my terry cloth shorts and, no water. I mean, I don't even know how I did it. I look back, I'm like, that was a really hard ride. Now
we didn't know.
Yeah, but I shouldn't have even been able, I guess I just had innate endurance I didn't know I had, right? But I didn't know people raced bikes. I didn't know anything about that. It was just I lived in the Poconos and it was just a fun thing to do. So I sort of put it aside when I went to college. I really didn't ride at all. I taught aerobics. I did all that kind of stuff. I was always kind of very active. I feel best when I'm in motion. Mm-hmm. And I found myself at Rodale Press after bumbling around, trying to find my way post-college, as one does. I wanted to write. I was writing for medical publishers, so it was sort of writing for lifestyle magazines geared towards resident physicians, which really actually did set the stage very well for me, because I was in the medical research, but also trying to write kind of layman's terms and lifestyle stuff. But anyway, I kept sending resumes once I discovered Rodale Press because they did bicycling and runner's world and prevention and men's health and women's health. I'm like, that's such a good fit for me. And eventually they picked up one of those resumes and a headhunter called me and I got a job there. And that sort of set my whole life into trajectory. I met my husband at Bicycling Magazine. I started they picked me up as a columnist. That lasted 27 years. I always wanted to be my own independent person, and I saw no reason to have to sit at a desk at the assigned time. So I went freelance just 3.5 years into that journey, in 1998. But I continued to be a contractor for them for, again, nearly 30 years. My stuff is still all over there. And, that's where my life got set. That's where I met people who I rode with and they were like, you should try racing. I'm like, what is that? And, I went to a race and I won it. And so that's how all that happened. And to answer the other question is sort of how that all, once I became a mom, which I did amidst all that with my husband that I met at Rodale. Without my mother, nothing would have happened, honestly. I would have never been able to travel to Africa and Brazil and all those places to race without her. And they still, like, there are days that my daughter will drive right past my house and go up to visit my mom. So they still have a really good relationship. We do too, but like it's kind of precious how that evolved, and they have their own very special relationship independent of myself.
That's awesome. And we need those people that can help us. I mean, and I remember my husband and I literally like high-fiving, like, okay, I'm back from my run. You go on your run.
Totally. We did a lot of that, a lot of tag teaming.
Lori's
I'll
in
go
it
out
now.
early. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have a 7-year-old, so it's like we definitely are like, you go early, you get the hotter part of the day.
We just make it work.
So I want to talk more. So when you were working, kind of all in at Bicycle Magazine, writing and such, you started. Obviously, you were, surrounding yourself by a bunch of other cyclists. You were still kind of casual, right? And then you said you did kind of a race, and you were like, "Wow, maybe I'm really good at this." Was it kind of that bug that you got after you won that first race, where you're like, "I think I'm all in on wanting to compete," or were you still like, "Nah, just like doing it for
not
fun"?
at all? Yeah, no, it's interesting you asked that. I continued to sort of just dabble. We did some 24-hour races, it just, as it sounds, you race around a course for 24 hours with teammates. It really didn't spark until quite a bit later. After my daughter was born, quite honestly. I was always very good at those amateur races, and I enjoyed them for what they were. And then in 2008, again, kind of on a lark, I signed up to do an Ironman triathlon. I was just like, it's kind of bucket listy sort of thing. I didn't really even know if I could do it. I hired a couple of coaches, and, they were like, with your bike times, you could qualify for Kona. And I was like, I don't want to hear that. Like, that's not actually what I wanted to hear. I just wanted to sort of do it, because then I was literally all in. I hired, his wife was a swim coach. She coached me. And I won my age group and went to Kona 6 weeks later. And that is where everything changed. That's where I got picked up by a semi-professional mountain bike racing team that next year and raced around the world. Like, that was a huge pivotal point in my life.
So had you ever been in a pool before? Like, had you been background swimming, or were you like, I'm such a good cyclist, I can drown in the water and it doesn't matter?
Well, it's funny that you say that, because I had dabbled in triathlon, because triathlon, if you remember, if anyone was, I don't know what sports you're involved with, but at that time, like the early aughts, it was really booming, it was just a time of triathlon, and it was just sort of in the air at Rodale. Like, a lot of people were like, oh, I'm going to try this thing and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't swim real well. Like, I swam as a kid, like learned, you know what I mean? Like, you blow bubbles. And so that's the last I had actually like purposely swam like a freestyle. So I would go to the pool, and it was terrible, but I was just not drowning well enough to get out of the water. You know what I mean? That was really what I was doing. And my first swim, I was like, when you go to that first triathlon and you look, you're like, oh my God, that buoy looks like this. It's like a little dot. And you're like, you're kidding. Are you kidding? That's
open
what
water.
Half mile. Right. Yeah. People are like flailing, and you're just like, this is, but the first one, it was so fun, and I felt really badass. Like, that's the thing that made me feel more badass than anything. I was like, I swam all the way over there, and then I swam over there, and I got back. But like, I realized when I signed up for the Ironman thing, I'm like, I cannot do that for 2.5 miles. Like, I can't not drown for 2.5 miles. I had done a half with my terrible swim technique, but I hired this coach, and she had no coach. Like, she looked at me swim, and she was like, we have work to do. Like, she was just like, we have a lot of work to do. And I am prone to hyperbole, but this is not hyperbole. She took 45 minutes off my half Ironman time.
Wow.
Just learning to swim. Like, it's all technique. It's all technique. Like, I would get out of the water. I'm like, I'm so refreshed. I'm ready to go. And, it wouldn't be like, I'm just dead, last person out of the water. So exhausted. I don't even know how I'm going to continue my day. Like, I would just go out and be like, I am warmed up. Let me get on the bike. It's so night and day. So that was really important. So then when I did I was fully able to swim. Yeah.
Well, and what I thought of when you were talking about that is just what you show your kids when you do that stuff, right? It's like, I learned to swim at, I don't know how old you were when you did that.
I was 39.
Yeah. Like, I fucking learned to swim at 39.
Yeah.
When you're thinking about like oh, you know what, it's too late, or I'm too old, or whatever. I'm like, no, like,
No,
I'm so
absolutely
inspired by
not.
these older women that like don't lift a weight until they're 60.
Yeah. Oh, I knew. I have shown up to mountain bike races. I'll never forget. I showed up to one, and this, little, and I say little because she was slight, older
Yeah.
woman was like pulling this big bike out of her car, and she came over to talk to me, and she was 63, and this was her
Yeah.
first mountain bike race, and she had hired a friend of mine, and she's she does stuff that kind of scares me now. Like I'm like, whoa, she's just dropping in on stuff, but she just got lessons from the get-go.
Yeah.
And if you have the right skill coaches, like it's because it is all just skill. I mean, when you have the skill, you have the confidence, because you're not worried about killing yourself.
Absolutely.
So coaching. So obviously you kind of talk about always having a coach yourself as we
Always.
know, always having a coach no matter what. Now you obviously are a coach and been coaching for
I have been forever, but coaches still need coaches.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
coaching.
Yes.
Do you have a favorite kind of person that you like to coach, that you like to train?
Yeah, I'll be very, very clear. I don't do much one-on-one coaching at this point. Like, that was never my very favorite thing to do. I'm a little introverted. So I like coaching masses, so writing books, doing that kind of thing. But when I was doing more one-on-one coaching, I always just liked the kind of people you're talking about, like that new adult person.
Yeah.
Is my favorite kind of person to work with because they see huge games. It's amazing how like a little structure goes such a long way. It's very fun to coach that kind of person and then like see them succeed and see them grow confident in themselves. Like I was never interested in the person who I could just get marginal gains. I'm like, you can go to somebody else who's really geeky on the numbers and is going to like work with you because that wasn't, I mean, like I get it. I like data enough, but not that much. Go see that person. Yeah.
How did you get into the like feeling your body piece? So when you started mostly, it sounds like in, sports, and then obviously you need to feel your body appropriately. Yeah. And so then is that when you got into the nutrition portion?
Yeah, I mean, that was just sort of a confluence of factors, if I'm honest, because I was doing a lot of writing, not just for bicycling, where that's an important piece of what I was talking about too. So, but also prevention and women's health, and all of that. So, and I always just found it interesting, so like personally interesting. So while I was writing for those publications, I thought I should really pursue this so I have some numbers or letters behind my name and I have another layer of credibility besides being a science journalist, So that's where I pursued like that nutrition coaching piece and a lot of the training certification kind of things just to add that layer of knowledge and add that whatever. So, and it's interesting like how it has evolved. And I mean, I obviously needed to learn to feel myself because I was doing very long things, when you're going to be out there for 8, 9, 10, days, like you need to like, that's where everything gets made or broken. I mean, that's true. Yeah.
How did it shift as you aged? Like, how did your fueling, your body and your nutrition shift as you aged?
It's funny you asked that because it has just shifted again pretty radically, honestly. Yeah.
Okay.
I like sort of half the world in endurance sports went through the like, oh, we don't really need the carbs phase of things. Yeah. Right. And I honestly did pretty well with that early on. But then, when I hit menopause, it was interesting. Like I was not doing well with that anymore. Yeah. Like I felt not good. Like, and it's easy to chalk that up to those changes. Like it's easy to go, oh, well, this is me now. I guess I'm not as strong. I guess I don't have the same whatever. And I just thought I've been writing about carbs and, we know that low carb thing is really not so great. And I never felt calm, so like I was just not eating enough carbs and not fueling for what I was doing, specifically carbohydrates. And I didn't understand as much as I do now about low energy availability and how low carbohydrate availability really puts you at risk for low energy availability. And that those symptoms are very similar to perimenopausal symptoms. I mean, there's a lot going on there. So I was just like, I am just like, I can't feel worse. I am just going to start eating like way more carbs. Yeah. And it was like a switch. Like I felt more energy. I felt calmer. My power was back. I was recovering better. So now like I am not worried about them. My blood sugar got better. Like all of that stuff got better when I was just like, I am going to follow this instinct and and science and do this.
So Selene, give us a glimpse into like, let's say just a normal ride. Like for you is probably like well above and beyond like a normal person's normal ride. But for you, how do you fuel and kind of prepare yourself so that you don't hit that wall when you're out there? Like, what do you eat? Like you're getting ready to go out on a mid-morning ride. Like, what are you eating for breakfast? What are you taking with you on your ride to kind of make sure you're constantly fueled?
Yeah, I eat pretty much now the same almost thing every morning because I also had this thing where I was constantly like, I'm constantly hungry. And it was annoying. I'd be like, and I work at home, so the fridge is downstairs, and I could just be like wandering around with a spoon, sticking it in whatever, just being like, I just couldn't satisfy it. So I have started eating just like this bowl of, it's like oats with dried fruit and a ton of seeds and a ton of nuts, and it's like, I don't even know how many calories in it. I'm sure it's a lot, but it holds, and I mix in nut butter, like it's a thing, but it sustains me for 4 hours or so. Yeah. So I'm just like, that has been magical for me. So I always start the day with that. Now, if I'm going to race, I'm not necessarily going to have that. And then like a half hour, an hour later, it's just like a little bit too much in my stomach. I mean, at those points, I will actually eat, and this is going to sound terrible, but this is my process. I will eat something like a donut and bacon because the bacon slows down the donut, and I've got strong, like good energy right out of the gate. But I also have something going like, whoa, let's not shoot it all into the system right away. And like, it just works. And then I will carry, some, whatever I have. I don't like bars and stuff. They don't sit really well with me. So I'm a little fussy about what I'll put in my pocket to eat. But, I just make sure I have some sort of carbohydrate source that I will start to eat within an hour of starting a ride, if it's going to be a longer ride. Now, if I'm just going to go out for an hour, I'm not going to take anything. I'm just going to I'm fine for an hour. If it's going to be 3 hours, I will have something to eat midway. So
if you're doing like a 7 or 8 hour ride, are you kind of fueling yourself every hour? Is that kind of?
Yeah. Because, you can probably get away with not, but then you're going to crash pretty hard. Like that's the mistake most people make, is they don't start eating early enough because they don't really feel like it. But once you feel like it, you're already in a hole. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Right. That's how I felt. Like I just ride for fun. And there's times where I'm like, I've already hit that wall and it's too late. No matter what you're shoving in your mouth, you're like,
it doesn't ever get you right back to where you want to be. Yeah.
No, it's rough. Let's talk about your books. So you have a lot of them, Jenny, and you've read a lot of them, and I'm going to get on that for sure. Why don't we dive into like what has been your favorite to write, and then Jenny, maybe you tell us what your favorite to read.
Wow.
Oh my God, next level.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to say next level. Like Roar has a special place in my heart because it started something, right? Like that book was really important because Stacy was pretty much a lone voice in the wilderness at that point, saying the stuff that now you hear everywhere. It's really caught on. But that book, like meeting her, I met her at a conference in Colorado that, you have to get CECs to continue your credentialing. You know what I mean? So I went to like the USA Cycling Coaching Summit every other year because you got this bundle of credits that would carry you over for another 2 years. And they always had the same dude saying the same thing on the stage. They just did. It was like, and in 2014, I think it was 14, whatever. A friend of mine who lived in Colorado Springs, who always went, was like, I know that you are dreading this, but you should go and see this woman, Stacy Sims, talk. And I was like, okay, now that's something to look forward to. And I saw her talk. And she got up on stage in a sea of men, because it was mostly men, and talked about periods and hydration and women's menstrual cycles and the luteal phase and gels and all of the things. And when it was done, she walked out and it was like the Messiah leaving the room. Like people just jumped up and like followed her out the room. And I was just like, I'm like, she needs a book. I'm like, that's all I could think of. And I just got in that line, and when I got to her, I was like, that was amazing. You need a book and I can help you do it. And she's like, great, let's do it. I mean, literally. And then not that long from there, I was flying out to Fairfax, out in California, and doing research with her, and it was, that was like a really big deal. So that book will always have a special place in my heart. Next Level is currently probably my favorite, just because I've seen just what the impact it's had.
Yeah.
And that's very satisfying.
It was a game changer for me. I was running a lot. I was training for marathons and stuff like that. I put on 10 pounds, felt like shit, Very common story. And finally I was like, I think I can't do marathons anymore. And I love to run, but I'm just going to keep it short. And I still get my mental, it's my therapy. But so I went back. I had been a big proponent of lifting until running started taking up more of my time. And I went back to lifting, and I feel better than I have in years. So, it's been an absolute game changer. So
lifting was a game changer for me too. I was always very muscular, so I just really didn't have to. I would just do like core work, mobility, that kind of stuff. But when I remember, like, I was racing in Cuba and I was probably 48, maybe going on 49. And I just like, where is my power? You get so accustomed to a certain feeling when you stand on the pedals, and just like, I guess this is the beginning of the end. That's really how I felt.
Do.
I called Stacy, and we were writing that book, and I'm like, I don't know if I can do this. Like, if I can't speak from my heart, then I am not this person that we should. And she's like, calm down, and she had me like start lifting, and I had never been under a barbell. Like, that wasn't something that we did then, so like it was like a switch went off when I started lifting heavier again, and and made some other changes, and like we talked about with the fueling, but I think the lifting was enormous. And then I went on to win a race when I turned 50, and I was like, okay, we can definitely do this book.
I think too that the difference is, I've read, there's so many books from men talking about women's fitness, and I started honestly to get pissed off.
By men, right?
What?
Women's health and wellness written by men, right?
Yeah. And there's one person, and I've mentioned him on the podcast before, so I don't want to do it again, but I heard him spouting.
You're going to have to put in the chat.
I will, because I would love to hear your opinion. But I mentioned him on another, I was listening to this woman's podcast, and he was spouting and spouting and spouting. And I was like, I wanted to be like, fuck you. Have you done any research on women? You are spouting all this crap.
Probably not, because nobody has.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. But and men have this innate confidence. So he's like, sounded very know-it-all. And I was just getting madder and madder. And I actually sent a note to the podcaster, and I was like, hey, has he done any work with women? And she's like, I don't know, but she had the same gut reaction I did. So it was such a breath of fresh air when I found that book. And I was like, yeah, I've read it multiple times.
Yeah, that's it. Yep.
So let's talk about the Menopause, the Feisty Menopause podcast, and how you've really brought the subject of menopause, I think, a lot more, like you vocalized it a lot more, like we all go through it, at different ages. We all have different impacts of how it affects us. But like, what really sparked that? Was it you yourself kind of experiencing all these changes? Was it just kind of, feedback from others? What was it that you're like, I got to get this out there. I got to share this information with others.
Yeah, it was honestly when I was writing that book, like I mentioned with Stacy, she was working with the Feisty Media company that is the host of my podcast at the time. They were doing a lot of agency kind of work for her, and they did a great job sort of getting her name, because that book, publishers really don't do a great job with that. They never have. It's gotten worse. So like the book Roar took off and got a life of its own once they started sort of helping promote it. And then we heard very quickly from people that one chapter on menopause was not sufficient. Once I hit it, I was like, you're right. And we had started working on it. And Feisty Media reached out to me because they recognized that they weren't talking to women in that space either. So they knew I was working with Stacy. They knew we were doing this book, and they said, would you do a webinar or that kind of a thing, like an online kind of thing on the topic of menopause? And I had learned so much that I had no idea about. Like, I joke often that we should call the podcast, Why Didn't We Know This? Like, why didn't we know that estrogen is involved with brain chemistry and all these things? Like, I didn't know anxiety. I didn't know all that anxiety I was going through was related to hormonal shifts. And like once I did, like the anxiety didn't vaporize, but I knew what it was, and it made it better just knowing that, oh, I'm
For
like,
sure.
okay, this is about hormones. So, I there was so much that I had learned, and I was just like, people should know this. And I knew that I had a lot of contacts that I had built over the years, especially writing for prevention. I had a lot of women's health contacts. And I had a lot of women that I'd raced with who were my age demographic. And I was like, you guys should have a podcast. And they said, do you want to do it? And I just said yes, because that's how I am. And literally 2 weeks later, they're like, well, okay, we'll launch it in a couple of weeks. I'm like, what? I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. But we did. I mean, literally, it was 2 or 3 weeks later, the show was off and running.
Well, it's an awesome show. And it's, again, super inspiring to see all these women who are, living their best lives and breaking through barriers at different ages, right? What's been the most surprising to you through this journey?
That we don't know exactly where the ceilings are. Like we have been operating on, as you alluded to earlier, like no data or such a huge paucity of data for older women specifically, older women, active older women. It's a desert, there's just not that much out there. So we've been operating on this very generic human data that performance declines, blah, blah, blah per decade must, we just would have been operating on that. And I'm like, we don't know that. Like we actually don't. Yeah. And when I see women like Leah Goldstein, like win Race Across America at 52, and I see women I'm so encouraged by women in their 60s in my group. I have a lot of women in their 60s, even 70, because no one's talking to them, so they're just sort of in the group. And I'm like, we don't especially if you've always been active, who knows? Because that wasn't a cultural norm even, I don't know, 30 years ago, 40
Not at
years
all.
ago.
Yeah.
So we have no idea what
it reminds me of the 4-minute mile, the whole nobody can do it in under 4 minutes. And then it was like, boom, 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 or 5 minutes.
And then some high school kid does it.
Right. Yeah. And it's like, it shows you what's possible. And I mean, I don't know. And that's what I'm most excited about for our kids, right? So Selene has a 21-year-old who just graduated college. I also have a 21-year-old who graduated college and an 18-year-old who graduated high school, and showing them what is possible so that they can live differently and don't have to hang it up is amazing.
Well, and I think often, like this is a little off topic, but I think about this a lot, and I think it's important. We, and I'm going to say I'm 55, and I grew up especially with this sort of notion that older women let themselves go.
Oh, yeah.
And well, no wonder he picked up on a younger wife. Like she doesn't have sex with him anymore. And look at her, she doesn't, and fuck. Like no one ever talked about like that her vagina, that it hurt when she had sex.
Yeah.
You didn't talk about that because she had genitourinary syndrome of menopause.
Right.
So of course she's not having sex.
Right.
No one talked about like that she's not sleeping and she's anxious and like it makes me really angry how we dismiss those women as just like once they get older they get kind of like that. I'm like that. I think about that a lot and how sad it makes me because those women were alone and left and abandoned and dismissed. Like that makes me very upset.
And they didn't talk about it. So they didn't know that others were going through it. And social media is shitty for a lot of reasons and also amazing for a lot of reasons.
100%. Yes.
Yeah. So
those genies are not going back in the bottle.
Yeah.
For sure. So your daughter, Selene, let's talk a little bit about her. Is she an athlete? Is she into cycling? I'm just curious if she went like the other way or she's following in your footsteps.
No. And it's funny because she has said heartbreaking things to me over the years. She is a wonderful, wonderful kid. She was in the marching band. She likes to be active, but not athletic, so she swims, she hikes, she walks, she does stuff. She's not super into biking. That's fine. I think for a bit she felt like she had to try to be a mini me, and I was like, well, nobody needs another me in this house. That's fine. And, like there was a point at which she said, are your friends disappointed when they meet me?
Oh, God.
Right. And my heart just cracked in a minute. I was just like, no, nobody expects no, because most of my friends are they ride and they're, whatever. And I was like, not in a million years are they disappointed.
Yeah. Yeah. It's hard. My daughter, my older one she has gotten more athletic as she's gotten older, but I mean, she wasn't athletic as a kid, and I played soccer and stuff, but I wasn't talented by any means. So I got into it later in life too. And maybe she will, maybe she won't, but whatever she wants to do, that's cool.
Yeah.
Right?
And she knows she needs to take care of herself. Like, that's the only thing. I'm like, we have some grandparents that, she can see what happens when you don't, when there's gross neglect and a lot of television and complete neglect. Yeah. And she recognized that. I'm like, your path is your path. But I just want you to see, like, taking care of this vessel will benefit you. I mean, and then you make your own decisions.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's so important. You said that. So I have a son that's 7 and, he, knock on wood, hasn't broke anything yet. But like this summer, I swear he's had like 5 friends break their arms. Uh-huh. And I'm always reminding him, I'm like, you have one body. You can make the choices you want with it, but like that is your body. So like think
it's going to carry you a long time. I know you don't understand that.
I know. I'm like, this is what you got, bud. But he's 7, so he's like, I'm going to jump off this, and I'm going to, but I think it's a good little bit reminder, just because it goes a long way with like everything you put in your body and everything you do with your body. Like it's what you carry with you your whole entire life. So you don't have to be a competitive athlete, but treat yourself.
Totally. Yeah.
Treat yourself nicely.
Yeah. Some of the decisions we made, like I mean, I even think about. We didn't wear as much sunscreen as kids. We didn't
sunscreen. I was in baby oil, like laying. Yes.
I know. I'm like, oh my god, if you could go.
If it had 2 SPF, I was like, I don't know, man. Like, I gotta get.
That's a lot. Yeah. My daughter just got burned for the first time at 18. 18.
Wow. That was
we were like not able to move. Yeah,
I know. It's like putting tea bags and like.
Yes.
It was like a game to pull the like skin off yourself as you were like,
so God, I know.
So bad, but true. I'm like,
it's so true. I know, but like, we have learned. We've progressed from that, which is good.
Absolutely. Yeah. So what's coming up for you that you're super excited about?
What's coming up for me that I'm super excited about? That's a good question. I will tell you what I just did a thing that I was super excited about. Is we went to Kansas I got inducted into the Gravel Cycling Hall of Fame, which was
cool.
Very exciting. And I got to give a speech where I mentioned menopause in front of a big group of people, which I very much enjoyed doing. So that was like sort of the highlight of the early part of the year for me. I've been really looking forward to that. And it was a great week. It was very special. And I'm still like sort of on a little bit of a high from that. And then, just the summer, we have some really fun plans going out to Idaho for an event with my daughter. She just bums around the town and helps with the race. Sometimes she helps hand out water bottles and that kind of thing.
I love
it. So that's
is she
fun.
living in Idaho?
No. The event is in Idaho.
Okay.
So we'll travel out together.
Selene, are you in Colorado?
No, I'm in Pennsylvania.
Oh yeah.
Darn!
I know. When
Very not Colorado.
If you ever come out here, I know when you said you were out here for a conference, I was like, oh damn! If you ever come out here, I want to know about it.
Oh, I will. Yeah, I'll let you know. I do get out there with some frequency, but
yeah. So in Idaho, I have to tell you, there's a potato you can stay in.
I am down.
Okay, I'll send it to you. So my daughter, she found it on Instagram like years ago, and it was 2020 when I was like, my job, they had laid people off, and I was like, let's go stay in the potato. And so we drove out to Idaho, and we stayed in this potato. It's in a field. There's a pasture of cows right there that you can like pet. The bathroom is like a silo. It's super cool.
Maybe they could take like a ride out of it, like, a race to the potato.
No, I kind of like that. I like that. Yeah. Like, I mean, that's cool.
Yeah, it was super fun. It was just like, I'm getting more ridiculous as I get older. I'm like, I'm going to stay in the most bizarre, weird places. I love that. So
that's very cool. That's a good goal. I think that's a good life goal.
So travel-wise, Selene, for you, I'm assuming, being such a cyclist, a lot of your travel kind of always kind of paired with your riding. Have you gotten to the point where now you are okay with just traveling to travel and not ride, or do you still always have
I very much prefer it being, because my husband rides too, and now that I am racing less and caring about that less, we get to ride together more, and we've been doing like more bike packing kind of stuff together, which is very fun.
Are you saying you used to leave him in the dust and now you're like, it's
well, yeah, I mean that's the truth. I mean, and he knew, I mean, it is what it is. But he, genuinely, it was hard. He felt left behind because he likes to ride with me. So it's been fun to be able to do that stuff together and not be like, oh, I still have to train,
Right. Just for fun and enjoyment.
Yeah.
What's your favorite place that you've biked?
Ever?
Yeah, ever.
It's a really close call between Brazil and South Africa.
Okay.
But I will, boy, that's hard. I'll probably give it South Africa because it was so incredibly, incredibly beautiful. But they're a very close tie.
Was it so cool? So hot though?
It was, it's early season that they do that stage race, so it does get hot, but not like insane hot. Yeah. The hardest part is coming out of training over Pennsylvania or Northeast winter, and you hit the ground in March in South Africa, and you're like, I am so not ready for this. Like it's hard to get, and I didn't have time to like, I'm going to spend a month in South Africa. I mean, I just like kind of hit the ground running and pray for the best.
Yeah. So empty nest, you're empty nesters.
Yep.
How does it feel? Like what are your, okay. Tell us what you love about it.
I love it. And it's, like our daughter still, she's sort of in that liminal space where she has her apartment, but the lease is up and she's here sometimes. But what I love is it's very much like when Dave and I first got together, that we wake up on a Saturday morning and it's ours.
Yeah.
It's just like, what are we going to do today? Whatever we want. Yeah. And, that's nice. And we've always had dogs forever too. Like, I think when you have kids, dogs, why not have goats, everything? Yep. Like you're taking care of everything anyway. It doesn't matter. Yep. What's right? I mean, it feels that way.
Totally. I have a dog and cat and kid. Yeah.
Yeah. But now we have 2 cats, but our last dog just died last year, which was hard.
Yeah.
But also we're enjoying the freedom from that space too now, because that really opens. We're not somewhere 3 hours away going, who's going to take care of Curtis? We got to call somebody. You know what I mean? Like make sure that somebody lets the dog out.
Who gets to call today? Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just like, it's like a really heady kind of freedom that we haven't known in a long time that I am very much enjoying.
Good for you. It's funny. Because I'm like, we have to figure out what we like to do. And we both have a ton of hobbies and they're mostly outdoor. And I was thinking about like, what did we do when we first got together? And it's very different. Like we hiked and stuff, but I wasn't a runner. He was into biking, but not like he is now. So our lives look very different, but it's such a great place to be. And the hobbies that we have lend itself to being empty nesters, right? Because we can be gone all day.
Totally. That's what I mean. Or we can I'm kind of a bird nerd too. So like, and I look out
when you got around 50, because I swear to God, at like 47, I was like,
it happens. I know it's inevitable.
I didn't believe it. It's weird.
I have like 12 pairs of binoculars now. I'm very geeky. It's just ridiculous. But it's good. You embrace it. Just come to it. It's okay.
I have a few years left before.
Before it's just a thing. It's just a thing that happens. Nobody talks about it, but you'll come to that side. So but then we throw like the paddle boards in the car and the bikes in the car and the binoculars and like it's a whole thing. And it's just really cool. Yeah.
It's fun. It's like I told my husband too, I said, we're going to do adventure travel. Like we love to travel. I'm like, we're going to do adventure travel because we are healthy and able to do that right now. So we're going to do all the things.
And that will enable you to continue to be healthy and do all those things.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So, Selene, before we wrap it up, I want to know what's the best advice that you could give to just women in general?
That's a big question.
It's a big question, but I think you can answer it. I only throw the big question out to the really true badasses that can.
Yeah, I mean, boy, I think, don't let shame and expectation and shame related around expectation stop you from living your fullest life, because I see that happen all the time. Like, we still culturally and societally are the ones that are making breakfast for everybody and taking care of everybody. And you know what? They will be okay. They can do it. They will figure it out. They really, really can.
Yeah.
Just give them a little warning. I'm going to South Africa in 2 weeks. It's on the calendar. You guys got to figure it out. I will not be here.
Yeah.
And it's okay. Everybody's fine. Nobody lost an arm. Everybody's fed. Everybody is fine. It's good for everybody. It is okay. Think like a man. Sometimes I tell my friends that. What would a man do in this situation?
Yeah, right.
That's check yourself. It's a good bar.
I love it. Yeah, I think that's great advice, because we overanalyze. I joke, I could put overanalyze on my resume, right?
But it's true. I'll be out on a ride. I'll be like, oh, I should get back. I said I'd be back. My husband doesn't even know what time it is. I'm just like, okay, I need a bit more of that.
Yes, absolutely. That's awesome. That's great.
Selene, thank you so much. Can you tell people how to reach out to you, how to follow you, all the things?
Yeah, they can follow me. The best place to find my work really is feistymenopause.com. That's where all my writing is and all of that kind of stuff. You can follow us there on Instagram and Facebook. And then if you're interested in me, you can sort of follow my exploits through those channels. But that's the best place to go. And hit play, not pause.
Yes. Well, I have to say, honest to God, thank you. I really feel like you and Stacey Sims saved my ass the last 2 years.
Thank you.
And I am incredibly grateful. And so now I will be a voice also.
That's what it's about.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I appreciate it. Thank you. And thank you for taking the time. We're incredibly grateful for it.
Oh, thanks for having me. It was fun.
Absolutely.